What do you do when the woman you love forces you to choose between her and her sister, while an entire galaxy burns around you? Commander Marcus Vale never imagined his answer would reshape the fate of humanity itself. The holographic message flickered before him, and the violet eyes of Sereth, the alien woman who'd become his everything, stared through him with an intensity that made his chest ache. "Choose one, Sister Marcus," she whispered, her voice crackling through the damaged transmission. "Choose me or choose Velora, or I'll choose for you." Behind her, explosions painted the sky crimson. The war had finally come to Earth, just as every species in the Galactic Consortium had promised it would. They'd endorsed humanity's enslavement 3 cycles ago, voting unanimously that Earth's people were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human to be allowed their freedom. They thought they were civilizing the galaxy. They didn't realize they were awakening something ancient and furious that had slept in human hearts since the first fire was kindled in a cave. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached toward the hologram, even though he knew he couldn't touch her. Not anymore. Maybe never again. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. Marcus was just a Xena diplomat, one of Earth's first representatives to the consortium, stationed on the crystalline world of Therios Prime. He'd spent his days in tedious negotiations, trying to convince alien species that humanity deserved a seat at the galactic table. That's when he met Sereth. She'd walked into the negotiation chamber like starlight, given form, her silver skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her emotions, a trait of her people. The Luminari, that made lying nearly impossible for them. Her sister Velora stood beside her, identical in every way except for the coldness in her eyes. Both were ambassadors from one of the consortium's founding species. Both were achingly beautiful. Both were completely off limits to a human diplomat trying to prove his species wasn't the barbaric savages the galaxy believed them to be. "Your people fascinate me," Sereth had said during their first private conversation, her patterns glowing warm amber with curiosity. "You're so young as a species, yet you've accomplished what takes others millennia. Why?" Marcus remembered, laughing, uncomfortable with her directness. "Maybe we're just stubborn. We don't like being told what we can't do." Her patterns had shifted to deep blue sadness. He'd later learned that stubbornness may destroy you. The consortium doesn't tolerate defiance. She'd been right, of course. But in the weeks that followed, as Marcus and Sereth grew closer, he'd started to believe maybe things could be different. She'd shown him the gardens of Therios, where crystalline flowers sang in harmonics humans couldn't hear, but could feel vibrating in their bones. She'd taught him to read the language of her skin, the way her bioluminescence spoke truths her words sometimes couldn't. And one night, beneath 3 moons that painted the sky in shades of copper and gold, she'd touched his hand, and her entire body had erupted in colors he'd never seen before. "What does that mean?" he'd asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It means I'm terrified," she'd admitted. "Because I'm falling in love with you, and that makes you the most dangerous thing in my world." Velora had discovered them the next day. She'd stood in the doorway of Sereth's quarters, her expression unreadable, her skin patterns locked in a neutral silver that revealed nothing. "Sister," she'd said quietly, "we need to talk." What Marcus didn't know then was that Velora had been watching him too, that she'd been compiling evidence, building a case, preparing for the moment when she could use humanity's greatest weakness, their capacity for love, against them. The Luminari had a custom, ancient and sacred. When 2 sisters desired the same mate, the mate must choose, or the sisters would choose for them. It was meant to prevent conflict, to maintain harmony. But Velora had twisted it into something else, a weapon. "I claim right of choosing," Velora had announced 3 days later, in front of the full consortium assembly. Her skin blazed with righteous gold. "The human Marcus Vale has engaged romantically with my sister Sereth. I also desire him. By our law, he must choose between us, or we will choose his fate." The chamber had erupted in chaos. A human being fought over by 2 Luminari ambassadors? It was unprecedented, scandalous, and it gave the hardliners in the consortium exactly the ammunition they needed. "This proves it," Ambassador Krethix had hissed, his reptilian features twisted with disgust. "Humans are disruptors. They poison everything they touch, even our most sacred traditions. The motion to endorse Earth's slavery must be brought to an immediate vote." Marcus had tried to speak, to defend himself and his entire species, but the vote had been swift. Unanimous. Every single species in the consortium, even those who'd seemed sympathetic, voted yes. Earth would be classified as a slave world. Its people would be harvested for labor, its resources stripped, its culture erased. And it was all because Marcus had fallen in love. You have to understand, Sereth had told him that night, her patterns flickering between anguish blue and rage red. Valora doesn't love you. She loves power. She's been working with the hardliners for months, looking for any excuse to subjugate Earth. You gave her that excuse. Marcus had felt his world crumbling. Then I'll choose. I'll choose you publicly, and maybe it won't matter, Sereth interrupted. The vote is done. Earth is condemned. Unless, she'd trailed off, her patterns shifting to a color he'd never seen before, something between violet and black, deep as space itself. Unless what? Unless Earth responds the way I think it will, she'd whispered. Unless your people show the galaxy exactly what it means to awaken human fury. She'd been right about that too. Earth hadn't accepted the consortium's judgment with bowed heads and broken spirits. Instead, humanity had done what it had always done when faced with extinction. It had weaponized everything. The consortium had superior technology, yes, but they'd never faced an enemy that fought with the sheer creativity and ruthlessness of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war against itself. Humanity didn't just build weapons. They turned their entire civilization into one. Within weeks, Earth's fleets were striking consortium worlds with tactics that horrified the galaxy. They used the enemy's own technology against them, hacked their systems, turned their AI servants into saboteurs. They targeted infrastructure, supply lines, communication networks. They didn't fight fair because fairness was a luxury for species who weren't fighting for their survival. And they were winning. The consortium had expected a quick conquest. Instead, they got a bloodbath that made them question everything they thought they knew about civilized warfare. Your people are erasing civilizations, Valora had told Marcus when she'd visited him in his detention cell on Therios Prime. Her patterns were pure white shock. 3 consortium worlds have surrendered. 2 more are in ruins. They're calling humans the Fury, the species that responds to chains with annihilation. Marcus had felt no satisfaction, only sick horror. I never wanted this. None of us did. Didn't you? Valora's patterns had shifted to accusatory red. Your whole history is violence, war, conquest. The consortium was right to fear you. The consortium made us their enemy, Marcus had shot back. You made us your enemy. You want to enslave us, and you're surprised we're fighting back? Valora had studied him for a long moment. Sereth believes in you, in your capacity for something beyond violence. She's trying to broker a peace. Did you know that? She's risking everything to convince the consortium to rescind the slavery endorsement. Marcus's heart had stuttered. Where is she? She's on Earth, Valora had said quietly. In what you call the Forbidden Zone, the region where your fleets are launching their attacks from. She went to speak directly to your leaders, to try to find a way to stop this war before it consumes everything. And then Valora had leaned close, her patterns shifting to that same deep violet black he'd seen in Sereth. I'm going to give you a choice, Marcus Vale. The same choice my sister offered you. Choose one of us. Choose me, and I'll use my influence to ensure Earth is spared, enslaved, but intact. Choose Sereth, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure your species is completely eradicated. Or refuse to choose, and I'll make the decision for you. That's not a choice, Marcus had whispered. That's a threat. That's diplomacy, Valora had replied, and walked away. That had been 2 weeks ago. Since then, Marcus had been trapped in his cell, watching reports of the war escalate. The human fleets had pushed deeper into consortium space. Entire species that had voted for Earth's enslavement were now suing for peace, terrified of the fury they'd unleashed. But the hardliners were doubling down, bringing in reinforcements, preparing for a final assault on Earth itself. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Sereth, trying to build a bridge across an ocean of blood. The message from her had come through on an encrypted channel, bypassing all of Marcus's guards. Choose one, sister, Marcus. Choose me or choose Valora, or I'll choose for you. He'd played it 17 times, trying to understand. Was she giving him an ultimatum? Or was she telling him something else? The answer had come in the next message, audio only, Sereth's voice, barely above a whisper. Don't trust the choice she's giving you. Neither option saves Earth. This is about something else. Something ancient. Listen carefully, the Luminari custom of choosing isn't about love. It's about power. Whichever sister is chosen gains the right to speak for both bloodlines. Velora wants you to choose her so she can claim my voice, my influence, everything I've been building toward peace. If you choose me, she'll claim you made the choice under duress, invalidate it, and use the scandal to push for Earth's total destruction. The only way to win is not to play their game. Marcus had sat in stunned silence. Then what do I do? Her response had been immediate, as if she'd been waiting for him to ask. Escape. Come to Earth. Find me in the Forbidden Zone. There's a third option they haven't considered, but we have to be together to execute it. Trust me. One more time, please. The escape had been easier than it should have been, almost as if someone had left the doors unlocked, the guards conveniently absent. Marcus had stolen a small craft and made the jump to Earth's solar system, his heart pounding the entire way. The Forbidden Zone was aptly named a region of space around Earth where human fleets had destroyed so many consortium ships that the debris field was nearly impassable. Navigation required split-second decisions and a lot of luck. Marcus had neither, but somehow he made it through, his stolen craft limping into Earth's atmosphere with alarms screaming and hull integrity at 15%. He'd crashed in what used to be the Amazon basin, now transformed into a massive military installation. Human soldiers had surrounded him within minutes, weapons raised, until a familiar voice cut through the tension. Stand down. He's with me. Sareth had emerged from the command center, and Marcus's breath had caught. She looked different, harder. Her bioluminescence was locked in battle red, and there were scars on her silver skin, actual scars, something that shouldn't be possible for Luminari. What happened to you? He'd asked when they were finally alone. I learned what it means to fight for something, she'd replied. Your people taught me. They're not the monsters the consortium believes, Marcus. They're desperate and brilliant and terrifying, yes, but they're also capable of incredible mercy. Do you know what your leaders offered me? Safe passage home. No conditions. They said they wouldn't hold me accountable for my species' vote. Marcus had felt pride swell in his chest. That sounds like humanity. It made me ashamed, Sareth had admitted, her patterns flickering to blue. My people condemned yours to slavery, and yours offered me kindness. It's not right. None of this is right. She'd taken him deeper into the installation, past soldiers and scientists working with an intensity that bordered on frenetic. There's something I need to show you, she'd said. Something that changes everything. The chamber she led him to was vast, filled with technology Marcus didn't recognize, a hybrid of human and alien design, working in harmony. At the center was a device that pulsed with the same violet-black color he'd seen in the Luminari patterns. What is this? Marcus had asked. A communication array, Sareth had explained. But not just any array. This broadcasts on the Luminari sacred frequency, the one we use for our most important ceremonies, including the choosing. Marcus had understood immediately. You're going to broadcast our choice. Make it public. Force the consortium to witness it. Not just the consortium, Sareth had corrected. Every Luminari in the galaxy. Billions of them. When they see what I'm about to do, they'll understand that the old ways can't apply to new realities. That love and choice means something different when two species, two worlds, try to become one. What are you about to do? Marcus had asked, though part of him already knew. Sareth's patterns had shifted through every color he'd ever seen, and some he hadn't, finally settling on a brilliant white gold that made her look like a living star. I'm going to choose you, she'd whispered. Not because my sister demanded it, not because custom requires it, but because I want to. Because love is a choice we make every day. And I choose you. I choose Earth. I choose a future where our species don't destroy each other, but learn from each other. And when Velora tries to invalidate my choice, to claim I was coerced or manipulated, every Luminari watching will see the truth in my skin. They'll know I'm choosing freely. And they'll have to acknowledge that choice. The plan had been brilliant and desperate in equal measure. If it worked, Sareth's public choosing would force a cultural crisis among the Luminari. The other consortium species would see one of their founding members breaking with tradition for the sake of peace. It might not end the war, but it could fracture the coalition enough to bring the hardliners to the negotiating table. If it failed, Sareth would be outcast, Marcus would be executed, and Earth would face the consortium's full might alone. Are you sure? Marcus had asked, taking her hand. You're risking everything. So is your entire species, Sareth had replied. Every day they fight, they risk extinction. The least I can do is risk my standing among my people. They'd spent the night preparing, going over every detail, every possible contingency. And in the quiet hours before dawn, when the broadcast was scheduled to begin, Sareth had held him close. "I need you to understand something," she'd murmured. "When I choose you in front of my people, I'm binding myself to you and to Earth for the rest of my life. Luminary pair bonds are permanent. There's no going back." "I know," Marcus had said. "I wouldn't want to go back, even if it means you can never be with another human. Even if it means our children, if we have children, will be something the galaxy has never seen before. Even if it means spending the rest of your life fighting for a peace that might never come." Marcus had pulled back to look at her, at the fear and hope warring in her eyes. "Sareth, I fell in love with you the moment you told me your bioluminescence made lying impossible. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? In a galaxy full of deception and political games, you showed me the truth. Every emotion, every vulnerability. How could I not choose that? How could I not choose you?" Her patterns had exploded in every color at once. And Marcus had learned later that among Luminari, this was the highest expression of joy, a release of every emotion simultaneously, a moment of perfect honesty. The broadcast had begun at dawn, transmitted on every frequency the Luminari used. Billions of eyes watching as Sareth stood before the camera, Marcus at her side, and spoke in her native tongue. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. Her skin told the story in colors that transcended language, the blue of her grief for the war, the red of her anger at the injustice, the gold of her hope for the future, and finally, the brilliant white of her truth as she reached for Marcus's hand. "I choose Marcus Vale," she'd said in English, so everyone would understand. "I choose humanity. I choose peace. And I reject any custom or law that says love must be a weapon instead of a bridge." The response had been immediate and chaotic. Within hours, protests had erupted on Luminari worlds. Younger generations, who'd grown up questioning the old ways, rallied behind Sareth's declaration. The older, more traditional Luminari denounced her as a traitor. The consortium assembly had descended into shouting matches and accusations. And Velora had appeared on every screen in the galaxy, her patterns locked in furious red. "My sister has betrayed everything we are," she'd announced. "She has violated sacred custom, aligned herself with a savage species, and brought shame upon our entire lineage. I invoke the right of correction. I challenge her choice and demand she face judgment." The challenge had been expected, but what came next hadn't been. Thousands of Luminari ambassadors, scientists, artists, and ordinary citizens had stepped forward to speak in Sareth's defense. They'd flooded communication channels with messages of support, sharing their own stories of falling in love with members of other species, of questioning traditions that no longer served their evolving civilization. It was a revolution, sparked by one woman's refusal to let custom dictate her heart. The consortium had fractured. Some species withdrew their support for Earth's enslavement, citing the internal turmoil among the Luminari as evidence that the vote had been premature. Others doubled down, insisting that this chaos proved humans were corrupting influences who needed to be contained. The war had reached a stalemate, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. And then Earth's leaders had made a stunning move. They'd broadcast a message to the entire galaxy, delivered by a weathered human admiral with scars that told stories of 100 battles. "You endorsed our slavery," the admiral had said, her voice steady and cold. "You voted unanimously to erase our freedom, our culture, our future. And we responded with fury. That erased civilizations, because that's what you forced us to become. But we're not monsters. We're people who fight when we're threatened, who love when we find something worth loving, and who forgive when we're given a reason to hope." Sareth of the Luminari gave us that reason. She risked everything to bridge our worlds. So we're offering this one time and one time only: rescind the slavery endorsement, recognize Earth as a sovereign world with full consortium rights, and we'll cease all military operations immediately. Refuse, and we'll show you that the fury you've seen so far was just the beginning. You have 48 hours to decide. The galaxy had held its breath. The consortium had argued, debated, threatened, and pleaded. In the end, it had been the Luminari who'd tipped the balance. Sareth's choosing had inspired something they hadn't felt in millennia: shame. Shame that they'd allowed their customs to be weaponized, that they'd endorsed slavery, that they'd become the thing they'd always claimed to stand against. The vote to rescind Earth's enslavement had passed with a narrow majority. Not unanimous, there were still species who hated and feared humanity, but enough. The war had ended not with a surrender, but with an exhausted truce. Earth would join the consortium, but on its own terms. And Sereth would remain on Earth, bound to Marcus and to the world she'd chosen. That had been 3 months ago. Now, standing in the rebuilt negotiation chambers on Therios Prime, Marcus watched as Sereth addressed the assembly. She spoke with authority that made even the hardliners listen, her patterns shifting through diplomatic golds and silvers as she outlined the new treaty terms. Velora sat in the audience, her patterns locked in neutral gray. She'd lost everything: her political power, her sister's trust, her credibility among her people. But she'd gained something too, a hard lesson about the cost of using love as a weapon. After the session, Marcus found her standing alone on one of the crystalline balconies. "I owe you an apology," Velora said, without looking at him. "I thought I was protecting my people from a threat. Instead, I nearly destroyed everything worth protecting." "You were scared," Marcus replied. "Fear makes people do terrible things. I've seen it in every species, including my own." Velora finally turned to him, and her patterns flickered with genuine curiosity. "Do you really love her, my sister? Or was it just politics?" Marcus smiled. "I love her more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. She showed me that honesty and vulnerability aren't weaknesses, they're the foundation of everything strong. And yes, I chose her. I'll choose her every day for the rest of my life." Velora's patterns shifted to that same deep blue. Sereth often showed sadness, but acceptance too. "Then I'm glad she found you. Even if it cost me everything, I'm glad she found someone who sees what I was too blind to appreciate." She'd walked away after that, and Marcus had never spoken to her again. Some wounds ran too deep for simple forgiveness. But he'd heard she'd dedicated herself to reforming Luminari customs, working with the younger generation to build something new from the ashes of tradition. Maybe that was her own form of choosing to become better instead of bitter. Marcus found Sereth in their quarters that night, standing by the window and watching the stars. Her patterns were soft amber contentment. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I'm thinking about choices," she murmured. "How a single decision can change everything. How terrifying and beautiful that is. Any regrets?" "None," she said immediately, turning in his arms. Her patterns blazed white gold, that color of absolute truth. "I chose you amid lust, war, and betrayal. I chose you when my sister tried to force my hand. I chose you when it would have been easier to choose power. And I'll keep choosing you, Marcus Vale, until the stars burn out." He kissed her then, feeling the warmth of her bioluminescence against his skin. A light that spoke of love and honesty and hope for a future neither of their species could have imagined. The story could have ended there, a perfect moment of peace after chaos. But that night, as they lay together in the darkness, Sereth's communication device chimed with an urgent message. She read it, and her patterns flickered through confusion, disbelief, and finally shock. "What is it?" Marcus asked, sitting up. "It's from the deep space monitoring stations," Sereth whispered. "There's something coming. Something from outside the galaxy. A fleet unlike anything we've ever seen." And Marcus, "They're heading straight for Earth." He felt his blood run cold. "How long until they arrive?" 6 months, Sereth said, her patterns shifting to battle red. "Maybe less." Marcus took her hand, feeling the pulse of her bioluminescence beneath his fingers. They'd fought one war and won an impossible peace. Now, another threat was coming, and this time, they'd face it together, not as human and Luminari, not as former enemies learning to trust, but as partners who'd chosen each other despite everything the galaxy had thrown at them. "Then we have 6 months to prepare," Marcus said firmly. "To unite the consortium, to show them that the strength we found in each other is the strength we'll need to face whatever's coming." Sereth's patterns shifted to that brilliant white gold again, hope burning bright even in the face of new darkness. "You really believe we can do this? Unite species that were trying to destroy each other just months ago?" "I believe in us," Marcus replied. "I believe in the choice we made. And I believe that when you give people something worth fighting for, not power, not territory, but connection and understanding and love, they'll find a way to become more than they ever thought possible." Outside their window, the stars gleamed cold and distant, and somewhere beyond them, an unknown threat approached. But inside, 2 people from different worlds held each other close, their hearts beating in synchrony. their love a small but fierce light against the darkness. They'd been forced to choose between lust, war, and betrayal. They'd chosen love instead, and that choice, more than any weapon or strategy, would be what saved them all. Because in the end, the greatest fury humanity could unleash wasn't destruction. It was the stubborn, unshakable belief that even in a galaxy full of hatred and fear, love was worth choosing, worth fighting for, worth everything.